Alright, hello YouTube. I haven't made a video specifically for you guys in a while, but I am going to do one now because I am so freaking excited about this new card game called Legends of Runeterra. So, it's Riot Games made it, so the people who made League of Legends. And, you know, I had a chance to go to Riot and play an early version of it. I also tested a bit, gave it a lot of feedback, and now it's finally out. Well, not finally out. It's still in alpha / beta. There's a lot of testing phases before it comes out like early next year, I believe. But for now, how you get into the game is you need to basically find a key. And I'm actually giving out a lot of keys on my stream, so you should tune into my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Amaz. I start at 6 a.m. Pacific time, basically every day. So you should tune in then. And, you know, link your Riot account with the Twitch account. And then by watching the stream, you get a chance to win a key and you can, you know, play the game as well. But on this video, I'm going to be basically, you know, going over some of the champions there in the game. And this will be good for people who don't have the game yet, people who are wondering what, you know, champions are good at what sort of decks, and even like new players that never played League before and are just wondering what the champions actually are. And I'll give you like a rundown of them, and you know, hopefully you'll find this video awesome. So we're gonna start off with some of the regions. So there are 6 regions. Each region features 4 heroes, and we're gonna start with Demacia. So Demacia is like this. It's like this country who values justice above all else. They have very strict rules, and they basically ban magic and everything. So that's basically their faction. There's 4 champions per faction, like I said, and the first one is Lucian. Lucian's a magical gunslinger, and you know, he is you know, very cool, very slick. He has double guns, and they are like magical guns as well. They shoot like light energy. And he's actually married to his wife Senna, but then Senna was actually trapped by an evil ghost being, which we will talk about later. It was also a champion. But in the game, Lucian is a 2-mana 3/2 with quick attack. So quick attack is kind of like first strike if you're you know, played Magic before. It basically means that if you attack a unit with Lucian and he kills that unit, then that unit does not attack back. So, you know, how many combat works is the kind of like Hearthstone or every card game. Quick attack is kind of like first strike. You attack first, and if the unit dies, nothing happens. But quick attack in Legends of Runeterra only works on offense. So if you're defending with Lucian, then quick attack does not work. So that's important. What's interesting is that every champion in the game has a quest to level up. And if you level up one of the champions, then all the copies of your deck gets leveled up as well. And usually that comes with like an extra bonus, like a stat bonus or something like that. So for Lucian, if he's on the board and he's seen 4 allies die, or a Senna, which is a special card for Lucian, die, then he becomes, you know, angry, and then he transforms into a +1/+1 and then double attack. So that's a huge stat upgrade, right? Like going from 3/2 quick attack to a 4/3 double attack is like a huge bonus. Plus, there's also an extra bonus where the first time an ally dies each round, you ready your attack. So to people who are kind of new to you know, the game, each turn, one player gets a sword and the other person gets a shield. The person with the sword can actually initiate combat. You can actually like drag your units onto the board and attack, and then the person with the shield does not get one. However, with Lucian, ready your attack means that you get a sword no matter what turn it is. If you already have one, then you can't. It doesn't work. But if you used it, you can get it back again. So this is actually big. Like readying your attack is really important. So Lucian is a very solid character. He's really cheap, so he fits into a lot of aggro decks, I believe. And if you play Lucian, then you are really incentivized to play Senna as well. Senna is a normal unit. It's a 3-mana. She's a 3-mana 4/2. Very similar to Lucian. Has quick attack, and then when an allied Lucian dies, when she's on the battlefield, she becomes +1/+1 and double attack as well. So very similar to the Lucian. You just want to play both, because if you have both Lucian and Senna on the battlefield, and your opponent doesn't AoE them down, then one of them is gonna buff the other when the other dies, right? And you know, a double attack is just really, it's just ridiculous. It's just so much damage. There's also another another mechanic in the game where you cannot have two of the same champions out on the field at once. So if you already have a Lucian on the board and you have a Lucian in hand, then the Lucian in hand turns into Lucian's Relentless Pursuit. And this happens with all champions, right? They turn into the signature spell because you can only have one champion on the board at a time. So if you already have a Lucian out, then the Lucians in your hand become a 3-mana spell. It is fast, so that means you can play it whenever you want. And it readies your attack. So Lucian is all about like aggro and going fast and just, you know, killing your opponent. And also, this happens to every single signature spell as well. Once you cast the signature spell, you shuffle the same copy of the card back into your deck. So you actually don't lose the card. So there's multiple options when that happens, right? You can actually keep the card and save it when your Lucian dies, so you can play another Lucian. Or you can use this and then shuffle another Lucian so you don't really, you know, lose it for late game anyways. So that's Lucian. All right, next up we have Fiora. Fiora is a very sassy duelist swordswoman, I guess. She uses one hand to wave around her sword, and she's like the fancy duelist. She's also associated with a lot of flowers and stuff. So Fiora in this game is looking to kill your opponent's creatures and challenge them one-on-one. So she's a 3-mana 3/3 with Challenger. What Challenger means that if she is attacking, you can actually pick and choose which of your opponent's units you want to attack directly. So you can drag that unit onto, you know, Fiora, and Fiora can attack her directly. So it's pretty awesome. And when she levels up, she has to kill 2 enemies. Now this does not include this includes like combat, so she can actually kill people in combat, or you can use a spell to make her damage something else. That also works too. So yeah, once 2 enemies are killed, Fiora becomes better, so +1/+1, and then she maintains Challenger. But then there's an extra clause, is that when I've killed 4 enemies and survived, you win the game, which is an insane line text. There's a very good card that Fiora goes with. It's a card called Judgment. It's Garen's signature card, where it's 8 mana, and a battling ally strikes all battling enemies. So if you have a Fiora on the board, so level 2, and then your opponent is attacking with 4 creatures, and you play Judgment, that Fiora can kill off all your opponent's minions and also survive, because battling allies striking at battle enemy doesn't mean they go into combat. So Fiora doesn't even take any damage. So there is definitely, Fiora is definitely a very combo heavy unit that you want to play around. Maybe you want to level Fiora up and then, you know, throw the Fiora one that you have on board away so that you can play another Fiora. You want to play a lot of buff spells on her so that you can actually get this clause. But a 3-mana 3/3 Challenger, I think that's a pretty good rate, even if you don't actually get this alternate win condition. Her signature spell is Riposte. 4-mana Burst. Okay, so Burst is a tad bit faster than fast spells, okay? Spells come in 3 different speeds. Burst means that after you cast this, you can cast it whenever you want, okay? After you cast Burst, you immediately get to play another card, okay? So usually you play a card and then your opponent goes, and then you go and then your opponent goes. It's like alternating, right? But with Burst, you get to play another card immediately. So you can play Burst, you can pass immediately if you want, but you have an option to kind of like weave your spells together and do some silly combos. So Riposte gives an ally +3 attack and Barrier this round. Barrier is kind of like Divine Shield in Hearthstone, where you ignore the first instant of damage, but it does go away at the end of round. So Barrier does not persist. So yeah, Riposte is pretty good. It basically helps Fiora kind of kill more units, basically. And since it's Burst, it's really good in tricking your opponent during combat. You know, you go like, oh, I'm attacking my 4/4 and your opponent's bossing for 5/5, and you can play this and kind of like, you know, blow them out of combat, right? So this is a little spell for that. Next up, we've got Lux, my main in League, actually, when I first started playing the game. She's one of the easiest characters to play at the start. She's a magician. She, you know, fires a lot of magical bolts of energy. She has to do with light energy. And in this game, she is a 5 mana 5/3 with barrier. So once again, barrier is divine shield, but only on the turn you play her because barrier does not persist through different turns, right? So she's really good at offense, right? You play Lux, you can attack with her immediately. She doesn't take any damage, and then she sticks around and hopefully you can cast 6 mana worth of spells in a single round, because that's what you need to level her up. Okay, so spend 6 mana on spells, and then she becomes level 2. She basically gets barrier. Wait, actually, I'm actually not sure about this. But I'm pretty sure she does not get barrier again. This is for like future Luxes, right? The Lux that you have on board is not gonna get barrier again. But there is a special ability that she gains. Is she does gain she gets to draw a final spark whenever she attacks. Okay, so yeah, +1/+1 on stats, and then gets a final spark in hand whenever she attacks. It's fleeting, means that if you don't use it that turn, it's still gonna go away, so you might as well just use it. Final Spark is a 6 mana spell that deals 6 damage. It is fast. It is fleeing, so once again, if you don't play it, it's gonna go away. But there is a very interesting ability. It's Overwhelm. Overwhelm is generally a keyword found in on units. Is when you overkill something. You actually deal damage to their face as well, so their Nexus. So it's a card. It's a keyword that makes it so that they can't block with 1/1s and stuff like that, right? But on a spell, it's kind of interesting because if you use Final Spark on a 1/1, you actually get to deal 5 damage to your opponent's Nexus. You can still kill a 6/6 or whatever, but this can actually be used to end the game pretty fast. So when Lux transforms, yeah, lots of pressure for your opponent. Her signature spell is Prismatic Barrier. Basically, it gives an ally unit barrier this round, and that's pretty much it. It is burst speed, so pretty good at combat. And once again, you get the Lux back in the draw. And then we have her brother, Garen. Garen is all about justice, and he has a great sword. People think Garen is kind of stupid because in League of Legends, he likes to just go face and not worry about anything and swing his sword around and around. That's basically his signature thing. You probably have seen Garen swing his sword around and just charging the enemy. He's kind of like, cool. Like, I don't know what you say. Cool, dumb, bullheaded, whatever you want to say. But Garen in this game is a 6 mana 6/6 with regeneration. Lots of keywords in this game. But once you know them, it's kind of you kind of know them. But regeneration is it heals to full health at the start of each round. So very similar to Magic the Gathering, where you just heal to full health at the end of every single round. Anyways, in this game, damage is persistent. But Garen, doesn't matter if he takes damage. He's just gonna be always a 6/6 pretty much. And after he's struck twice, he is going to level up. And striking twice means that he's actually in combat, right? In combat and actually dealing damage to something twice. And then he becomes a 7/7. So once again, +1/+1. Still maintains regeneration, but then has a bonus ability of, at the start of the round, ready your attack. What this basically means is that it's only going to affect half of your rounds anyways, because half of the time you're starting the round with a sword icon, right? So you can attack anyways. But this means that you can also attack on your opponent's turns. When your opponent gets a sword, you also get a sword because of Garen. So Garen puts a lot of pressure, changes combat significantly once you level him. And yeah, your opponent just has to deal with it the right way because of the regeneration clause. It's really hard to deal 6 damage in this game. His signature spell is Judgment, which we referred to as before. It's a fast spell, and the ally that you target will basically deal its damage to all enemy units that are currently on the battlefield, that are battling. So if they do not drag it out on the battlefield and are not engaged in combat, they do not get hit. So as the game progresses, I'm pretty sure that people are gonna, see this coming from a mile away because it's 8 mana. It's really expensive, so they would not drag all their units out to get, blown up by this. But yeah, this is a very strong AoE spell. It's a one-sided board wipe if you have a very strong unit. All right, onwards to Freljord. Freljord is very, very good. I love Freljord. It's probably one of my favorite factions in the game. One of the 2 at least. And they focus around a very, very cool mechanics for sure. So let's go and start Braum. Braum is a big buff shield master in League of Legends. He actually does carry the big shield and actually protects his allies Using the big shield, it can block projectiles, it can deal less damage, he can hop to their aid. He's basically a very friendly protector is what he is. In this game, he's a 3-mana 0/5. He has Challenger, so same thing. He can be like Fiora, where he chooses which unit to battle. But you might be thinking, oh, it's kind of weird, right? He has 0 attack. Why would he want to actually, attack, right? But it's because he has a quest to survive 10 total damage. When he survives 10 total damage, he upgrades into a very strong version. And to help you out, he also has regeneration. So basically, when you're playing Braum, you kind of want to, go into a little mini game of like seeing if your opponent has like 3 attack minions or even 4 attack minions, so that he can survive the damage. And then when he transforms into the level 2 version, he gets +2 health, so very different from the other ones, right? Usually you get +1/+1, but Braum gets +2 health instead, maintains Challenger and maintains regeneration. But whenever he survives damage, you summon a Mighty Poro, and the Mighty Poro is a 3/3 Overwhelm unit. So yeah, level 2 Braum, it gets pretty ridiculous. You basically get infinite Mighty Poros because your opponent can't attack into you, and on your turn, you can actually make a 3/3 because you force a unit to attack Braum, and just deal whatever damage and you get a free 3/3. So Braum is a very solid card, and if your deck is aiming for some mid or late game strategy, or even a Poro deck, then he becomes really good. Okay, his signature spell is Take Heart. It is a burst speed spell, so instant, very super instant. You get to play another card again. And it grants a damage ally +3/+3. So it's actually perfect for Braum because Braum is usually going to take damage. He's usually going to survive because you're dictating what he blocks and what he's attacking, blocking, kind of, right? So, buffing him up permanently, by the way, this is not just end of turn, means that he can actually start killing units now because he becomes a 3/8, right? And then when he upgrades, he's gonna be damage stronger. So yeah, there you go. Ashe is the next one. Ashe is the queen of the Freljords, the Frozen Kingdom or whatever, and she is freaking awesome. I think she's the first deck I made in this game. And Ashe is a 4-mana 5/3 with a very strong attack clause. Is when you attack, you frostbite the strongest enemy. Frostbite is a mechanic in the Freljord region where you choose the strongest enemy by attack, and then you change to 0. So Frostbite is changed to 0 that round, which is ridiculous. Which means you basically just take it out of the battlefield. They can't block of it because if they do, they can't do any damage about it. And you can just blow people out. It's just very, very aggressive, which is nice. And there are a lot of spells that can apply Frostbite, which is good because she levels up when you Frostbite 5 enemies. Now, these 5 enemies does not need to be a thing when she's already out of the battlefield. You can actually Frostbite 5 enemies anytime you want, and then you can play her later in the game, and it still works. So she doesn't need to be on the battlefield, which is a little special. All right, so when she levels up, you get to get a Crystal Arrow next round. So you basically skip your draw next round, and you draw a Crystal Arrow instead. You get the +1/+1. She maintains the Frostbite strongest enemy, but here's an extra kicker. She now makes it so that your enemies with 0 power cannot block. This is very insane because now your opponent doesn't even get to choose whether they want to block with a 0 attack power, right? So because sometimes if they're dying, they were like, okay, you know what? I'll just lose this unit. Sure, it's really bad trade for me. But now they don't even get the option. And of course, this is even more insane because you are guaranteed to draw the Crystal Arrow, and Crystal Arrow is a one-time spell. Now, this spell is slow. Slow means that you can only cast it outside of combat, which means that if if there's some fight going on in the middle and you're dragging units or your opponent's dragging units or whatnot, you cannot cast this. So slow effect is usually the most awkward to play, but slow spells usually are the strongest in the game as well. They have very, very strong effects. So this one is you Frostbite an enemy, and then also all enemies with 3 or less health also get just frostbitten automatically. And you also draw a card, which is good because you actually replace your card draw with Crystal Arrow when you level up Ashe, right? So you actually don't lose out on the card. Now, Crystal Arrow is ridiculous because when you level Ashe up, she already has the phrase of enemies with 0 power can't block, right? So Crystal Arrow basically just means your opponent can't block that turn. And I mean, if you can actually level up Ashe, you probably attacked with Ashe a few times, so your enemy's gonna be pretty low. So yeah, Crystal Arrow is a lot of pressure for your opponent. Usually just ends the game when you play it because it's just that powerful. Ashe's signature spell is Flash Freeze. It's a 3-mana burst spell that frostbites a single enemy only. Very useful because, you know, if you have multiple Ashes in your hand, you can actually, you know, try and level up your Ashe on the battlefield a little bit faster because this shuffles an Ashe into your deck anyways. So yeah, very solid hero. Highly recommend playing this. Yeah, just start frostbiting your enemies, man. Okay, Anivia is a Phoenix, but made of ice. That's basically what she is. In League of Legends, she's actually kind of annoying. She blocks you off, has a lot of AoE abilities and stuns you and whatnot. She's kind of like a control mage. And her signature move in League is also in here. When she dies, she turns to egg. And then if your opponent doesn't kill the egg, she reborns into the same thing. So it's going to be here as well. So let's look at this. So Anivia is a 6-mana 4/3 she cannot block. So that's a pretty bad line of text. But she's a pretty good aggressive because when she attacks, she deal 1 damage to all enemies. That includes the Nexus as well. So you deal 1 damage to face, you deal 1 damage to all the units, and when she dies, she becomes an egg. Okay. Now she's a little bit complicated. When she turns to egg, she's a 1-mana 0/1. Oh, it's basically 0/1. So it's not 1 mana. It's just basically she turns to 0/1, and then at the start of the round, so at the start of a turn, if she did not die, she gets to level up and gets back to full health. So kind of ridiculous. And when she levels up, she gets +1/+1, so 4/3 to 5/4, and she has the text of deal 2 damage to all enemies now, which is even more backbreaking. Like when she attacks, he cannot beat that. So if you can level Anivia up, then the game is pretty much over. She still has the egg ability, so your opponent still has to kill this thing twice, which is so hard to do. So yeah, Anivia is really, really strong because of this ability of can't block, right? Generally speaking, can't block units are very, very they're very hard to play because if you're losing and you play something like this, your opponent can just ignore it and they just, you know, kill you, and that's a little bit awkward. And Anivia does help a little bit about that because she does, you know, semi AoE your opponents. But you know, just make sure that, you know, you make a good deck around this if you want to play Anivia. Her signature spell is Harsh Winds. It's a 6-mana burst spell that frostbites 2 enemies. It's actually better than it looks. At first you would be like, wow, 6 mana to just set 2 minions to 0 attack. That seems very expensive, right? However, this is actually, it basically wins you 2 combats, right? If you have like 2 units that are trading with 2 other units and you play this, then suddenly you just got yourself 2 extra units. So yeah, this card is actually pretty decent. I actually play Harsh Winds without Anivia, just Harsh Winds by himself in some of my Freljord decks. So yeah, don't underestimate this. Alright, and finally Tryndamere. He's actually the king of the Freljord, so you know, Tryndamere and Ashe, they're kind of a couple thing going on. If you ever want a win condition, then Tryndamere is your go-to because he is like huge, okay? He likes to go face a lot in League of Legends too. He's an 8-mana 8/4 with Overwhelm. So once again, overkill damage goes face when you're attacking only, okay? Overwhelm, First Strike, these abilities only work when attacking and not defending. So you have to be a bit careful. And then when he dies, instead, he levels up. So that is a very insane line of text. So kind of like a Death Rattle effect if you play Hearthstone. And when he dies, it's actually a huge stat gain. He goes to from 8/4 to a 9/9. All right, so not a +1/+1, you know, you regularly get. And he still maintains Overwhelm, but then he gains 2 more keywords. He becomes Fearsome, which means that he cannot be blocked by puny things, okay? So 3 or more attack minions or enemies can block this, but not the 2, 1, or 0 attacks. So you have to be big to challenge this guy. And he also gets tough, which means that he takes 1 less damage from all sources. That includes spells and stuff like that too. Basically, he's like 2 big bodies that can't be ignored because he's overwhelmed, and he just likes to go face. Now, his signature spell is Tryndamere's Battle Fury. It's 8 mana. and it gives an ally +8/+4 permanently. It's like a big buff. And then of course you get the Tryndamere again. And because it's burst speed, you can also blow someone out of combat using this. You know, if your opponent thinks they're safe and they're like, oh yeah, I'll just not block this 1/1 and take whatever, I'll just take 1 damage. You can actually play this and kind of end the game. You know, it might be pretty obvious because to play this, you already have a Tryndamere on board. So, you know, when people start playing other cards, they're gonna see it from a little bit far away. But technically speaking, yeah, it's a really swingy spell, and if you need a win condition, Tryndamere is there. All right, onwards to Ionia. Ionia is you know, it's a faction all about like, you know, blades and like, you know, swagger, I guess. Like all the champions are kind of cool. They have a lot of discipline. You know, it's Ionia. It's like fancy blade work and stuff like that. So let's start with Zed. Zed is basically an evil ninja in a sense. He likes to, his main thing is that he has shadow magic, I guess. So he summons a lot of shadows. He throws shurikens at you, and he's generally a very big pain to deal with in League because he can stomp on noobs really fast. Because he's an assassin, right? So in this game, he's actually very dangerous too. He's a 3-mana 3/2 of quick attack. And when he attacks, he creates a Living Shadow with the same stats. So Living Shadow is a card that's ephemeral. Ephemeral is a keyword that's basically lasts until the attack or it's the end of round. So they don't stick around. It's kind of like fleeting from spells, is that it's only for that turn. But, I mean, if you attack with Zed, you're basically attacking with 2 3/2s, right? And one of them has quick attack, one of them is ephemeral. So it's actually just miserable for your opponent already to deal with this. Now, he can also level up. He says, if my shadows and I have struck the enemy twice, I level up. Which means that if your opponent doesn't even block the Zed attack, then the Zed's gonna attack, the shadow's gonna attack, and he's gonna just level up just like that. Super easy. And when he attacks, he gets +1/+1. Maintains the quick attack, but now the Living Shadow has his stats and his keywords. So that basically means that they're no longer going to be ephemeral. They're going to stick around forever. So whenever you attack with this Zed, you're going to get a 4/3 that's also has quick attack, and that's also attacking. So gets kind of ridiculous, right? Zed gets basically out of hand if you level him up. So it basically is a pain for your opponent to deal with if you know, they don't really have a lot of blockers and stuff. Now, some fancy stuff you can do with Zed is, of course, you can buff his stats with some cards so that he can summon bigger shadows. I personally don't find it necessary. I find it that, you know, a 3/2 quick attack is already really strong, and it's really hard to deal with already. That you can just play him and also play some other support cards like, you know, kill a creature or, you know, make a creature lose attack so that he can actually survive combat more than just, you know, making a big fat cannon on Zed, you know. Anyways, his signature spell is called Shadow Shift. It's a fast speed spell that recalls an ally to summon a Living Shadow in its place. So you basically self-bounce something, you self-sap something back to your hand, and you get a 3/2. Not one of the best spells in the game for sure, because it's very expensive. 3 mana to bounce one of your own creatures is not really that good. There's a 1 mana spell that does the same thing. But you know, there it is. I mean, Zed is already really powerful, so his signature spell is not as good. Could save a unit from dying, but you lose a lot of tempo because you spelled 3 mana, basically bounce your own thing, where you can just not play this and just play this as a Zed when your Zed dies as well. So yeah, that's basically what I figured. Next up, we've got Shen. Shen is a 4 mana 2/6 ninja. Shen is kind of funny because he's not even a ninja. He does a lot of flashy moves. He's not subtle at all. He weighs around a big sword, a spirit sword, and you know, but he's a protector. He gives people shields, and in this game he does too. Support is the first time we're seeing that. So support happens when you attack with Shen, and something is on his right side as well. So support triggers on the right side of whatever unit they have. So if you have a Shen that's a 2/6, and for example you have a Zed directly on the right of Shen, then Shen will give him barrier for that turn. That's basically what Shen does. And then Shen levels up when allies have gained barrier 4 times when he's on the battlefield. So yeah, I mean, basically he triggers his own thing, right? But if you have other cards that give barrier, then he will level up a bit faster. And then when he levels up, he becomes a little stronger because, you know, he gets +1/+1. Same thing, he has a support thing. But whenever ally gets barrier, they also get +3/+0 this round. So it's all about like buffing your other units and just being a supporter in that sense. His signature spell is actually 6 mana, pretty expensive. So it's burst, and then you get to swap 2 allies and give them barrier. It's very funky. You know, you have to. It messes up combat quite a bit, but sometimes you don't even want to swap your allies. Pretty hard to use correctly, but I'm sure someone will, you know, take advantage of that. For example, if one of your small guys is not blocked and one of your big guys is, and you want to push some damage, you can actually, like, you know, stand united and, you know, do a little bit of trickery there. But this is a very hard to use spell. It's very expensive. Next up, we've got Yasuo. Yasuo is probably one of the most famous League champions because it is said that every Yasuo player either carries the game single-handedly, so it's like the best player in the game, or he just feeds because he just can't stop dying, and he's just the worst player. So it's a very swingy champion. In this game, he helps you if you kind of CC your opponents, because he does work really well with CC in League as well. So he's a 4 mana 4/3 with quick attack. And whenever you stun or recall an enemy, this Yasuo deals 2 damage to it. So basically, your saps, or, you know, basically, you know, recall, this is what recall is called in the game, becomes kind of like kill spells in a sense. You can deal 2 damage to them and you might kill them. And Yasuo levels up when you stun or recall 6 units. And once again, this is not an effect that you need Yasuo on the board for. You can actually draw Yasuo later, and then you can play him. And if you have done this before, then he still levels up. It's kind of like Ashe. And when you level up, Yasuo gets +1/+1, maintains quick attack, and instead of dealing 2 damage to stun or recall targets, he actually attacks it with his damage. So, you know, basically 5, right? If you're not buffing him or anything. So it's a big upgrade. You know, he can be pretty good in like a spell-oriented deck, and, you know, Ionia can actually make a spell-oriented deck for sure. So yeah, you can. I mean, if you are Yasuo main, then go ahead and go crazy and just try and get Yasuo to just carry your game. His signature spell is Steel Tempest. It's a fast spell that stuns an attacking enemy. Stunning means that you remove it from combat, so, you know, you don't even get the chance to fight back. You just kind of just remove them from combat, and you get a Yasuo, of course. His spell is okay. It's not really that insane. It is one of the good answers to stuff like Overwhelm. Overwhelm is a very good keyword in this game, especially because there's no double blocking. If you play Magic, then you're maybe more used to that. But here, if you have a 7/7 Overwhelm, it's actually kind of insane, right? So this is one way to deal with it. All right, and the final Ionia champion is Karma. Karma in the League of Legends game is a magic spellcaster, and she can buff her own spells. She can empower her own spells and stuff like that. And in this game, she can empower more stuff when you have maximum mana, because Enlightened is how she levels up. Enlightened means that you have 10 max mana. So basically, starting from turn 10, you're Enlightened. She's a 5 mana 4/3, and when you have her on the field, she creates a random spell to your hand at the end of each round. So that includes your rounds, your turns, and that also includes your enemy turns. So if your opponent doesn't deal with this, then basically you draw a card every turn, which is pretty good. And of course, when you reach 10 mana, Karma becomes Enlightened, +1/+1, and also an extra ability. It says, when you play a spell, cast it again on the same targets. This can get kind of crazy because there's things that like heal, so you can heal for double the amount, you can deal damage to double amount, you can draw twice the amount of cards. You know, very cool Karma decks revolve around getting to the late game, so lots of board clears and stuff like that too, right? So yeah, definitely a champion that doesn't really fit into every single deck. A champion that only fits into like a more late game value control strategy. Yeah. Her signature spell is Inside of Aegis. It's burst, so, you know, instantaneous. It creates a random spell in your hand. So 2 mana draw random spell is not necessarily that good, but if you're enlightened, you create 2 instead. So it's a 2 mana draw 2 late game. So she's all about getting to the late game. So hopefully you can, you know, figure out how you can do that, and then Karma becomes really strong for you. Okay, next up we have Noxus. Noxus is the faction of war, brutality, just straightforwardness, I guess. They want to get the job done, and they don't really care what the means to accomplish it is. All these champions are known for just, kind of going face, that's kind of getting the job done. It's kind of like aggro. Starting with Draven. Draven is a, welcome to the League of Draven. He is, wants attention always. In the League of Legends game, he actually has a crowd cheering for him, and every time he kills someone, that he gets this crowd throwing money at him. Basically, that's kind of like his theme. Anyways, he does things for the crowd. So he's a very good static creature. So 3 mana 4/3 quick attack. That's actually an insane stat line. Like 3 mana 4/3 with a quick attack is normally something that's like 4 mana or even 5 mana. So like a really good stat line. And when you play him, or if he strikes an enemy, you create a spinning axe in the hand. So spinning axe is a spell that's burst. So 0 mana spell. It's very weird. But then to play it, you have to discard a card. And then you give an ally +1/+0 this round. So not the best spell, obviously, but there are some synergies to this, such as like if you're playing a discard deck with Jinx. We're gonna talk about that champion more later. It's a really, really good combo. And then this actually pushes through so much damage by itself. You basically turn cards into deal 1 damage, right? So it's all about that. Now, Draven needs to level up by striking twice with a spinning axe, which means that you need to play spinning axe on Draven, and Draven needs to attack properly. So it's very, very difficult to level him up. But when you do get rewarded a little bit, because he basically gets overwhelmed. So your opponent can no longer chump block him. He gets +1/+1 like normal. And instead of getting a spinning axe where you play or strike him, you get 2 instead. So you can really start, hammering down your opponent and just, turning the aggression up. His signature spell is called Whirling Death, where a battling ally strikes a battling enemy. So very similar to Garen's signature ability, but this is a 1-on-1 instead of 1-on-all. Once again, this is a straightforward attack, so they don't fight. The unit just basically deals damage to that unit. So pretty good if you want to blow someone out in combat, because it's fast, and pretty good removal spell in general. Alright, Katarina is an assassin. Pretty much like Yasuo, Katarinas are actually either insane or feeds the game. There's a lot of good Katarina highlights in League of Legends where basically Katarina's spells revolve around throwing daggers at people, and if she kills someone, then all her skills basically reset, so she can do that all over again. So she usually just wipes up your opponent's team if it's a good Katarina player. For this version, Katarina is also very combo oriented. She has quick attack, so once again, very hard to kill on offense. She's 3 mana 3/2, and whenever she strikes, she recalls herself immediately and levels her up immediately. Now, what that means is that if she attacks like a 10/10, for example, she is still gonna level up because it's quick attack. You attack first, right? And then she gets bounced to your hand before the 10/10 can kill it. So Katarina technically cannot die unless your opponent has like fast removal spells to deal with her. And she's basically very stealthy, if you may. What happens when you level her up? Well, she gets +1/+1, maintains quick attack, but has an extra ability of when you play her, you ready your attack. So late game, the dream would be like, you play Katarina, you attack with whatever you have. Okay, that's fine. And then you play Katarina, attack with everything you have, and then Katarina gets bounced to your hand, where you can play Katarina again, and then you can attack with everything again. So you can kind of like have a lot of attacks in one turn. And if your opponent can't really deal with it and it doesn't have enough blockers, then you can just win the game. That's basically the dream of Katarina, right? However, there's a big downside in playing Katarina, is that you do not establish board. Usually, card games are won by establishing tempo. You have a lot of stuff on the board. But since Katarina bounces herself, it's kind of like Katarina is more like a spell than more like a unit on the board, right? So make sure that you only play Katarina where you're about to win. You don't want to just jam it out early game because you're gonna just lose to resources and not having enough of that. Alright, her spell is Death Lotus, very simple spell. It's 2 mana fast for deal 1 damage to all battling units, including your own units of course, so you probably want to use this when your opponents are attacking with a lot of 1/1s, and then you can clear them out instead of clearing your own minions. Next up we've got Vladimir. Vladimir is what they call like Hemomancer or something, but basically it's just a vampire. It's the count, count vampire kind of theme going on here. In League, he sucks people's blood to heal himself. Here, he basically sucks your own his own allies' health to deal damage to face. So as you can see, Vladimir is a 5 mana 5/5. When he attacks, he basically deals 1 damage to each of your other allies, and then for each ally dealt damage, he deals 1 damage to your opponent's face. It's kind of weird that you're smoking that way. You smoke your own units to deal damage to face, but think of it as like giving your units +1 and then -1. But then the +1 damage is kind of unblockable because it always just goes to face. So very aggressive character, and does ask you to, play units that don't really have just 1 health because otherwise they would just die. He levels up by having 6 of your allies survive damage. So he can kind of proc it by himself. And when he levels up, he basically maintains the same text, gets +1/+1, and then gains regeneration as well. So very hard to kill. Once again, very hard to kill a 6/6 regeneration unit without some sort of direct kill spell, or like something with like I block of a unit and I pump it up or something. It's very, very difficult to kill. His signature spell is called Transfusion. It's a 2 mana burst spell that deals 1 damage to an ally and then gives another ally +2/+2. So it's kind of fancy, I guess. The best use of this, or the easiest use of this, I guess, is to do it on a unit that's gonna die anyways. So it doesn't really matter. Like a 3/3 against a 3/3, you can just deal 1 damage to that anyways, and then you can win another combat somewhere else and give something +2/+2. So kind of interesting. Alright, finally we have Darius. Darius is kind of like the face unit for Noxus here. He's a 6 mana 6/5 Overwhelm. And he's known to be very, very aggressive as well. He levels up when your enemy Nexus has 10 or less health. Then he becomes super bloodthirsty, giving him +4 attack. So not +1/+1. And then he maintains Overwhelm. So this seems like a creature that it's not really have a lot of stuff going on, because he's kind of he kind of just wants to go phase. Well, that's kind of his character, right? He just wants to kind of get things done. And a 10/5 Overwhelm is pretty much something that you have to answer. You can't just leave it on the board and just block with 1/1s or whatever. So yeah, if you want to end the game fast and you want to curve topper, then Darius would be your champion to pick. His signature spell is very, very obviously, themed around face. For 5 mana, you get to decimate your opponent's Nexus for 4 damage. It is slow though, so you can't do it during combat, but it doesn't matter. It's 4 unblockable damage. So if you have a very aggressive deck, then just 5 mana, deal 4 to the face. Alright! 2 more to go. Next up, we have Piltover and Zaun. Piltover and Zaun is known for their, engineering, technology, robots, stuff like that. Dwarves or whatever. That's kind of like the faction of that, of invention, I guess. So let's go ahead and start with Teemo. Teemo is a little devil. He looks really cute, obviously, but people think he's the devil because in the League of Legends games, he plants poisonous mushrooms that are invisible, and when you step on them, you take a lot of poisonous damage, and it's very frustrating to basically just walk into mushrooms all day. So Teemo is a 1 mana 1/1 champion, so the cheapest champion in the game. He's elusive, which means that he can only be blocked by elusive units when he attacks. Similar to flying in Magic, if you play that. But basically, he's very sneaky, and only sneaky units can detect the sneakiness. He has the ability of Nexus Strike, so when he strikes the face, he gets to plant 5 poison puff caps on random cards in the enemy deck. So basically what that means is that 5 cards of your enemy's deck is going to get infected. And when they draw the card, they take 1 damage to their Nexus. So it's kind of like, you know, setting a bomb in their deck in a sense. And then you level up him by planting 15 poison caps. So once again, this doesn't mean that he needs to be on the board. You can plant stuff before he comes down. There are some faction cards that plant poison puff caps as well. So you can have a look up for that. And when he levels up, that means your opponents have 15 or more poison puff caps, right? So you get a +1/+1 Teemo. And when he attacks the Nexus, you double the poison puff caps in the enemy deck instead of adding 5. So, you know, he kind of snowball. You can get like 15, 30, 60. You know, it goes kind of exponential from there, right? Because it's double. Now, Teemo's problem is that, you know, you do need your opponent to draw the cards, and for your opponent to draw the cards, it means that the game needs to go a little bit longer, right? So Teemo is a very aggressive unit, but you also want to play more of like a long game. So he's a little bit weird. If you get up to something like 200 mushrooms, then your opponent can die very easily because of 40 cards, right? If your opponent has 200 mushrooms, then on average they're taking like 5 damage a turn, right? So then you're pretty happy. But if you're only planting something like 100 mushrooms or less, then it might not be like the most direct way of winning. It's not gonna work as well. All right, his signature spell is called Mushroom Cloud. It's a burst spell that just plants 5 poison puff caps. So basically, it's just a Nexus Strike. It's generally a very weak spell. Because it's 1 mana. I mean, come on, 1 mana. What can you hope for? And you know, if you can use this alongside of something that says whenever you cast a spell, do something extra, or when you have a spell, cast it again. You know, stuff like that would make it a little bit better. Plus, he's really cute. So if you play him, then that's fine. All right, Ezreal. Ezreal is a adventurer, I guess. He likes to travel to museums and, like, you know,
You belong in a museum.
uses gauntlet to like fire light missiles at people and, like, you know, teleport around and stuff. He's kind of like sneaky in a sense. So in this game, he's pretty sneaky too. 3 mana, 1/3 elusive. And then when he hits the Nexus, so similar to Teemo, you get a Mystic Shot that's fleeting in your hand. So once again, fleeting means that it disappears if you don't use it. And a Mystic Shot is a 2 mana, deal 2 damage to anything in the fast speed. So good removal, you know. And it's anything as well, so you can also hit the enemy's tower or Nexus if you want for late game. And he levels up by targeting enemy units 8 times. Now, once again, doesn't need to be on the board. You can target stuff beforehand, and it will still work. And when you level him up, he gets +1/+1, still has Nexus Strike, creating a 0-cost Mystic Shot now. So instead of 2 mana Mystic Shot, it's now 0 mana. So it's really, really strong if your opponent can't deal with an elusive creature. And whenever you cast a spell, you also deal 2 damage to the enemy Nexus. So there's a lot of face damage. You want to end the game quick if you're playing Ezreal, because you want to get the elusive keyword down. So if you think face is the place and it's the name of the game, then Ezreal is your real deal to win the spin for the win. Yeah. All right. Jinx is a crazy gun lady that, you know, I remember that she has a very traumatic past or something, and she basically, you know, copes with just being very happy and crazy and just like to blow stuff up and just being gun heavy, and she basically just likes guns and explosions. Okay, in the game here, she is 4 mana, 4/3 quick attack unit. So once again, very smorky, and she levels up by making if your hand is empty and she's on the board. Now, this is basically the discard deck I was talking about back when I was talking about Draven. Jinx, you really want to get an empty hand fast because her level up ability is really good. So when she levels up, she gets +1/+1, like normal, and she gets 2 extra abilities. Start of the round, you get to draw a card. So that means that you draw 2 cards each round instead of draw 1 card, which is insane. So even though you're discarding your hand, you get to draw more cards at the end anyways. And the first time you empty your hand each round, you get a Super Mega Death Rocket, which is fleeting in your hand. And the Super Mega Death Rocket is a 2 mana spell that deals 4 damage to the enemy tower and 1 damage to all the other enemies as a slow spell. Yeah, this is going to end the game really quick. I mean, basically, when you're at that point, you're gonna draw 2 cards, you're gonna play 2 cards, you're gonna play Rocket. Next round, you're gonna play 2 cards, you're gonna play Rocket, and so on, right? Your opponent's just gonna die to Jinx really, really quickly, and that's kind of her theme, right? Just blow things up. So really work towards getting an empty hand for Jinx. There's a very good discard deck I have made for Jinx. By the way, I've made a lot of cool decks that I'm gonna show in other videos as well. So you guys should check that out. These are my first impressions of deck lists, and they're really, really good. I think I have like a 98% win rate on most of these decks in the preview patch here in the preview week of Legends of Runeterra. So make sure you check those out. But yeah, Jinx, very, very strong unit, very strong hero. Finally, we have Heimerdinger. Now, I actually haven't played with Heimerdinger before, but from what people told me, he's actually pretty fun. Very hard to build a deck around though. So he's a 5-mana 1/3, so very, very bad stat line. Holy shit. However, whenever you cast a spell, you create a fleeting turret in your hand, and a fleeting turret is fleeting means that you have to play at that turn, and a turret is like a random. Okay, it's like a random turret. There are so many different turrets, and he levels up when you summon 12 total power of turrets. So power is attack, right? So if you summon a 4/1 turret, and then a 6/1 turret, and then a 2/1 turret, that'll work. And the turrets range from all the way from 0 mana to 8 mana. So let's look at this. So there's a 0/1 challenger turret. There is a 1/1 turret, one with no text. There's a 2/1 tough, a 3/1 elusive, 4/1 fearsome, 5/1 quick attack, 6/1 overwhelm, 7/1 barrier, and then an 8/8. So it's kind of weird. They're all turrets that basically are minions, and you can just play them. Heimerdinger is a weird one, man. All right, so when you level him up, he becomes when you cast a spell, create a fleeting upgraded turret in your hand. Upgraded turret is basically a turret that's a little bit stronger, I believe. I actually haven't played Heimerdinger. I haven't even seen Heimerdinger played yet. He's kind of like the, a deck challenge, I guess. So, he's a weird one. It's also kind of weird in League. Like, not a lot of people are Heimerdinger players as well, because he also creates turrets in League of Legends. And who likes to create turrets when you're playing a MOBA, right? You just want to play your champion and make your champion really strong. So, definitely a weirdo one. His signature spell is called Progress Day. It's a burst spell that you draw 3 cards and then you reduce their cost by 1. It's very, very weird because it's 8 mana. It's pretty expensive, but spells are generally a bit more expensive in this game, and they're generally fine. And since you're reducing the cost by 1, it's kind of like a 5-mana draw 3 spell. And hey, you might be able to pull some crazy combos with the mana reduction, right? So yeah, Heimerdinger is a very, very rare card, and good luck building a deck. I'll probably make a Heimerdinger deck sometime, but yeah, it's definitely kind of a memey one. Alright, and finally, we have Shadow Isles. I think Shadow Isle cards are my favorite cards currently in the game. Shadow Isles is also pretty cool. It's the faction of like spooky ghosts and demons and like ghost creatures. It's just a very cool zone. The colors are like all green and teal and like, blue, like, it's kind of spooky colors. It's very cool. Starting with Elise. Elise is a spider lady. So, Spooky Spider Lady is a 2-mana 2/3 fearsome. Whenever she attacks, she summons an attacking Spiderling. And attacking Spiderling is a 1/1. So, yeah, in League of Legends, she summons a lot of spiders as well and uses spider themes. She can also turn into a spider as well. And that's what happens in this game too. At the start of each round, if you have 3+ spiders, so 3 or more spiders, she becomes a Spooky Spider Queen. And when she's a Spooky Spider Queen, she makes all your other spider allies Challenger and Fearsome, which basically means that you control combat for the rest of the game with spiders, right? Challenger means that you can determine blocks, and Fearsome means that your opponent can't block even if you just decide to just go face, right? So yeah, Spider Queen at least is really, really strong. It's also interesting to know that she gets +2 attack instead of +1/+1. So she goes from a 2-mana 2/3 fearsome to a 2-mana 4/3 fearsome and challenger. So she can actually obviously, right? As a spider, you can catch a prey and then digest them or whatever spooky spider thing you want to do with them. So very thematic. her signature spell is called Crawling Sensation. You summon 2 spiderlings if an ally died this round. It's a slow spell, but doesn't really matter. You're not really gonna cast this in combat anyways. So 1 mana make 2 1/1s is actually a really good deal, especially since if you're playing Elise, you're probably gonna make a lot of spiders, and you want cards that actually benefit off spiders. So yeah, Elise, Sue spider deck. Next up, we got Callista. Callista is a very interesting unit in League. She basically chooses one of your allies and bonds with them. And then they both get a lot of bonuses when they're near each other. So it's kind of like a pact, I guess. So in this game, same thing. You know, she's a 3 mana 4/2. And when you play her, she bonds with one of your other units. And then that unit takes all the damage for Callista. So think of it as like, you know, a meat shield, I guess, which is kind of interesting because your ally can attack as well, right? And then when she levels up by, you know, having 3 other allies die, she's on board, and then 3 other allies died, including her bonded unit, probably. She gets +1/+1, and then whenever she attacks, she gets to revive the ally attacking and reforge the bond. Now, this is kind of a weird weird jumble line of text, right? But what this basically means is that if Callista ever levels up, she will revive 1 unit. So think of it as summon a unit every time she attacks, and that unit protects her, which is ridiculous, right? Especially if the unit that she's bonded with is like really, really valuable. You know, if it's a unit that is like, you know, has some keywords like tough or something like that, then it's gonna be very annoying to deal with Callista. So yeah, Callista is really, really good because, you know, you just kind of have to deal with 2 targets at once. Her Black Spear is a very strong spell. It deals 3 damage to a unit for 2 mana, but only if an ally died this round. It's very easy to have allies died in the game, especially in Shadow Isles. There's a lot of cards that, you know, kill your own units. There's a lot of units that kill themselves after they attack, so like the ephemeral text. And yeah, it's very, very efficient. 2 mana deal 3 is really good in this game. All right, next up we have Thresh. Thresh is a spooky demon lantern wielder, jailer kind of thing, kind of spirit. He's the one that imprisoned Senna from Lucian just now, the Gunners. Yeah, he's the one that captured Senna in this Lantern of Souls and stuff like that. So in this game, he's also gonna capture people's souls. He's a 5 mana 3/5 challenger, so he can hook people. In League of Legends, he hooks people, right? So he hooks a person, so kind of like challenges them, and then whenever an enemy dies, he steals their soul and heals 1 health. Now, if he steals 3 souls of enemies, basically how he levels up is, you know, seeing 3 enemies die, he becomes, you know, +1/+1. Also as a challenger, also has the same text of healing things when they capture their souls. However, there's a new line of text, is that the first time he attacks of a game, he summons an attacking champion from your deck or from your hand directly. So this is very reminiscent of the Lantern ability in League of Legends, where he throws a lantern and an ally can pick it up, and they're automatically pulled to his position. So it's kind of thematic. So Thresh is really good if you have you know, if you have a champion that is really, really expensive. You know, pulling like a Tryndamere would be pretty backbreaking because the champion that's being pulled out is also attacking. So, you know, it's a little interesting deck building because you also need to kill your enemies as well. You know, if you can fulfill this challenge, then you can cheat out on mana really, really well. His signature spell is called the Box. The Box is basically an ability that kind of traps people in and prevents them from leaving the place, right? So in this game, the Box is a 4 mana burst spell that weakens all the enemies inside. So enemies have -1 attack this round, so they're all weakened. And if an enemy summons a unit this round, they take 4 damage. So basically that means that your opponent cannot summon they cannot play any units that turn. So it's a very weird entrapment kind of clause. You know, you win combat and your opponent can't establish the board. It's a very weird one for sure, but I'm sure you can, you know, make this go around. You know, it's pretty nice spell. It's a lot of effects for 4 mana. And finally, Hecarim. You know, a ghost centaur. He's probably the coolest character, I think, out of all these 24 heroes, I believe, on the first you know, the preview patch of you know, Legends of Runeterra. I think he's super awesome. He's a 6 mana 4/6 with Overwhelm. So once again, overkill damage. And then when he attacks, he also summons 2 Spectral Riders. Spectral Riders are 2 mana 3/2s with Ephemeral. Ephemeral, once again, they disappear after they attack, basically. But if you look at it just like this, Hecarim attacks with 10 attack. So super aggressive, right? 4 attack for himself, and then 2-3 attacks. So it's really going to be very hard for your opponent to block correctly, since, you know, each player only has 20 health, right? Now, if you have attacked with 8 ephemeral allies, he basically becomes level up. Once again, you don't have to play him on the board. You can just attack and then just do this afterwards. And then he becomes +1/+1. And then ephemeral allies have +2/+0. So they have +2 attack as an aura, which means that the 2 attacking Special Riders you're summoning are 5/2s as well. So when you upgrade Hecarim, he now deals 15 damage a hit. And also, that's not even counting your other ephemeral cards you might be playing. And, you know, it's just, like, ridiculous. And he's also overwhelmed. Like, it's really hard to deal with an Hecarim. He just puts so much pressure on the board. His signature spell is called Onslaught of Shadows. Very, very simple. It's a 3 mana spell that summons 2 Spectral Riders. So basically, his attack command. So usually, you want to just save these as Hecarims, because Hecarim is a very high priority target for your opponent to kill. Usually, I don't really use this spell a lot. I just save it so that I can play another Hecarim if my Hecarim dies. So it's a very cool unit. All right, and there you have it. Those are the 24 champions that are in the game right now. Very, very cool. I have played this game a lot already, and I hope you guys find this video interesting, or, you know, you learned something from it. You know, more Legends of Runeterra videos coming, because I really like the game. I hope you guys like it too. You should let me know, you know, what you want to see from this game, from me. You know, different content and stuff like that. I mean, I play a lot of League in my off time too, so I'm very excited about these characters. You know, these characters are awesome, and also the gameplay was actually very, very, very refreshing. It's you know, a mixture of different games, and then there's also their own new spin to it. So yeah, definitely recommend you guys checking it out. Which means that you should tune on to my Twitch to try and get a key. You can tune into other people's Twitches to get a key, but my Twitch, okay, watch me play. I'll teach you everything I do. You can ask me about stuff. Twitch.tv/Amaz is where you want to be. 6 a.m. Pacific time. I will see you there. Thanks for watching this video. And yeah, more deck lists and stuff like that coming soon.